Live, excellent. So let's bring up the text. This is a Farbrengen, connected to this week's parsha, but also connected to the anniversary of the previous Lubavitch Rebbe, and this is from the year 1954. Okay, so it's like this. I guess that Shabbos was like this Shabbos. Hold on, let's see who's trying to participate. That Shabbos is like this Shabbos. Hello, Rav Shimon, welcome back. That Shabbos like this Shabbos, which was the 13th of the 13th of Elul. Hey Aaron, the 13th of Elul. Hold on a second, I'm not sure what's going on over here. Was on Shabbos. So it says like this. Shabbos Shabbos Teitzei Yud Gimel Elul Tavshin Yudal, 1954. Yom Zeh, this day, meaning Yud Gimel Elul, Hu Yom Nisuyin Shakvoi Kedushas Marichami Admar. This is the 13th of Elul, is the anniversary of my father-in-law, the previous Lubavitch Rebbe, who was Beno Yechidai Shal Nasi Yisrael Memal Mekoymai. He was the only son of the Nasi, of the leader of the Jewish people, referring to the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe of Chabad, who only had one child, didn't have any daughters or other sons. And then he was the one who inherited, so to say, his space. Hatam Lakach means he inherited to become the Rebbe after his father passed away in Taf Reish Pei, which is 1920. Hatam Lakach Shemeforsim Shahanisuin Hayu B'Tesvav Bel. Why is it that otherwise known? The idea is that the wedding was on the 15th of Elul, although it actually was on the 13th of Elul. I'm not sure why this keeps on jumping like this. Mishum is because Yud Gimel Elul Chol Ba'isashana B'Yom Shishi B'Shavua. That year, unlike this year, the 13th of Elul was on a Friday. So although they got married on Friday, they only had the wedding meal on Sunday. Tesvavel. But meaning the chuppah, the halachic wedding was on Friday. Haisibit Gimel Elul was on the 13th of Elul. Behine, Nisurim B'chlal Heminyoni Klali. A general, a wedding is a public thing, is something that's not just a private thing. You invite guests, friends and family, etc. The poor, those who you want to, all those who want to participate at your simcha. Even more so. Even more so, this idea that a wedding is a general, meaning it's not just about the Rebbe, it's about the Rebbe is not a private person; he's a public person. So it's a wedding of his only son, and also the one who took him over. Hold on a second, I just keep getting this message from Zoom. I'm not sure what it is. No. Okay, so he says like this. The high new meaning. Nisurin shall ish klali hariheim vevadi inyan klali biyoser inyan klali shall ish klali kitlakama. That a wedding of a person who's a communal person, especially a Rebbe, is definitely a communal event, and therefore the Rebbe is saying that although it's something that's seemingly private to the previous Rebbe, we're going to farbring about it in 1954 because the Rebbe is a Rebbe, and the Rebbe is not a private person. Hatam lakach nisurin him inyan klali. What does it mean that the wedding is a public event or a public ceremony? Yuvna yisoid mashakasav b'zohar, based on what the Zohar teaches. Shalamitase shal davar nishmase shal chasim and nishmase shal kala heim neshama achas. It's a famous idea. It's a romantic idea, but the source is the Zohar that says, in truth, the soul of the groom and the soul of the bride are a single soul. When they came down at some point when it split, it split into two. And it's possible that one part of the soul has no knowledge even of the existence of the second half of the soul. When it comes marriage, the two parts of the soul reunite. This is a Zohar. Valpiza Yuvin, based on this, we'll understand. Gam Lashon Hamurgal, the well-known saying, that with regard to a person who's not yet married, that person who's not yet married is known to be called a plag gufa, a half a body. Because a person can have a full body and a half a soul. And the soul, the body corresponds to the soul. So if your soul is only half, so your body is only half. Everything physical, chomer, material, has to fit to the form of its, so to say, of the spiritual, the physical and the spiritual, the form and the image have to go together. And if the soul comes down as one half of a husband and wife, so the body also has to be. That the body is really a single body, like Adam, right? Adam was a single body, split apart, and then came back together as Adam and Eve. So that means that while you're still single, God willing to get married soon, but until that point, you're a half a body, not just a half a soul, because the body corresponds to the soul, and if the soul is in half, because it has to reunite with its other half, so to the body is missing its other half until it gets married. So when is there a completion of the person's soul? When that person gets married. Before the person is married. You're only half. Therefore his soul wasn't complete yet because he hasn't, or she hasn't found their other side. Here the Rebbe introduces a bigger idea. It's not just that your soul is half and your body is half. Your avodah, what your purpose in this world doesn't go into its full form until you unite with your other side, with your wife or your husband. Up until the point where a person gets married, you're unable because you're only running on half. You know, there's a halacha in about two people doing a malacha. So the law is that what one person could carry. When we know this from when they carried the fruits back from Eretz Yisrael, the spies. What one person could carry, it's not that double that two people could carry. Two people could carry much more than double of what a single person could carry. So too, it's not just that you have a half avodah, I'm doing half and she's doing half and I'm doing half. And then when we get together, then it's, we got one spiritual bank account. But also together, even if you count it together, you're still not able to do a completion of what you're both supposed to do together. Before a person gets married, your avodah can't be complete. You don't have your full soul. You're functioning on half a soul. When a person gets married, now your soul becomes united and becomes complete. Your avodah now could be complete. And the Rebbe continues. From this is understood. This is a very crucial moment in the person's life. That now he or she is united with their other side. Now they're able to have a full soul, full body, and a full avodah in this world, for a full service. They have to function in a completion. Your avodah, and again, the avodah is what you're doing here in this world. The avodah means the work. The job that has to get done by you is only when you're a team. And we know that every soul that comes down is not just an isolated event. The whole world was waiting for this soul to come down at this moment. It's a public moment. It's a communal moment. Everyone is affected, not just our generation, but all generations are affected when every single soul comes down. So therefore, when the soul now gets married, and if every soul's being here in this world affects the entire world, so now that the soul is complete, it affects the entire world. Then now this soul is complete and is able to function and do its avodah properly. He said, "The Rebbe asks this. In general, the talks of the Rebbe about marriage in this week's parsha, because it's the anniversary of his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, and the Rebbe learns, and we'll try to maybe get to part of it. The Rebbe learns different lessons from this week's parsha that we could learn about marriage, like for instance, the law of Micah, building a fence around a person's roof that's an accessible roof that people go on. So make sure that you don't fall off. The whole lesson that we can learn in life from that law of the Micah, the Rebbe connects to marriage. Okay, Viseir Mizu. The Rebbe asks that. Not only is marriage something that's universal, so to say, to all the people involved, even in heaven is affected when there's a marriage. When a person achieves their true avoda in this world, and again, the person can only achieve their full avoda once he or she unites with their other half. So therefore, the avoda affects also heaven, the upper realms. So now we're saying that a marriage is not just something that affects universally in this world, but it affects also the in the upper worlds. The Rebbe explains. What does this mean? Tachlis Priyas Adam, what is the purpose of a person being created? Vavaydase in his or her service in this world is inyan dinasavik Kadosh Baruch Hu liyas leis baruch tir b'tachtenim. Hashem had a desire to have a dwelling place for himself in this world, in Tachtonim, in the lower realms. The Hainu, what does that mean? Sha'adam, how do you create a dira, a home for God in this world? Sha'adam bavaydase, when a person, through their service, Poyel ba'olim dira Kadosh Baruch Hu, you are effective to make for Hashem a dwelling place in this world. When we do what we're supposed to do, that is the definition of creating for God a home in this world. And how do you understand, what does it mean, a resting place for God? It's exactly how we understand a home for yourself here in this world. Just like when a person has a home, he or she, it adds to the person's completion. As the saying goes, K'mayim Razal, Dira Na Marchiva Daita Shaladam. A nice house, a pleasant home, broadens the mindset of a person. When you're in a broad space, it's not just broad physically, it affects your mindset. You're in a broad mindset. Keinu K'vyachal Amayla, so too by Hashem. When we create for Hashem through our avoda in this world, it gives God a dira. What does that mean? Or chadash, it's a new light. Just like a person gets a new energy, a broadened mindset. In when you have a home, so too there's so to say, the Havla Hashem has a new mindset. And what does it mean for God to have a new mindset? That it emulates an or chadash, a new light, because now He has a home. Much greater than the light before even the contraction that was allowing for the world to be created in the first place. Otherwise, again, the rule of thumb always has to be that that there has to be an overwhelming gain in any kind of exercise to get back to start. Meaning to say, if God had to contract His light in order to be able to create a physical space of this world, there has to be a gain that's not just to go back to that light before there was the contraction, but a gain that we can only have because of the contraction and the achievements we have. And that is an Or Chodesh, a greater light, even than the light before, than the light was contracted in order to create. There has to be a benefit. Like a person's ready to build a home for the effect that the home is going to give that you wouldn't have if you didn't have the home. Chassidus explains, what's the bottom line? It can't be, like I said, to go back to the original light before the light contracted in order to create the world. Right? We learned that the idea is that the light itself is too great to be in a physical space and in the physical limitations of time and space, etc., 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 the world of separation. So God, because God's light at its essence is all one, and it's this great light, so there couldn't be a separation. So He had to contract the light, to darken the light, so to say, or even to totally eliminate the light, to bring in this new light, the Kav, all the way it's explained in Kabbalah and Chassidus, in order to be able to create this limited space. But what's the purpose? That we should have a greater light even than the light that was contracted in the first place. Like he says, the bottom line is not to get back to the original light. This light was anyways filling the space. So what did you get back to bring the light back? What's the unique thing? So what was gained? And as the Rebbe says in Yiddish, was is der uftu? What's the big deal? To get back to where you started from. Ella, the point has to be that you're gonna because and only through creation and through making their avoda, brings a light, so to say, just like a home is marchivim daita shaladam. What does marchivim daita shaladam? It broadens a person's mindset. That the only way the person can get to this broad mindset is because of the nice home, the space that the person has. Otherwise, if a person is able to achieve it otherwise, so there's no chiddush in the home. Same thing over here. The chiddush of creation, that we make a home for God, is to bring to Him, so to say, a new light that means to us a new light. That couldn't be here without this avodah. If that's the case, that when a person makes for God a dira, their avodah is not just effective in this world, but it affects all the way in the upper world, to the entire state of shtalshus, the entire chain of creation. Then now there's this whole new light by making God a dwelling place that goes through all the system of creation. And because we're saying that a person can't reach their full potential of being able to start service until one gets married, so you can imagine how much the creation is waiting for every person to get married. Because this new light is dependent on a person being complete, so the person can complete their service, so God can have a complete space, which is going to translate to a new light that couldn't have been here before. So we see how great an idea of a marriage is. So now we understand that a marriage is not only not an isolated event for the husband and wife, for the groom and the bride, or for their immediate family, and not only is it an isolated event and celebration for the community and friends, but it's for the whole world here. And not just the whole world here, the whole world of all spaces, of even the most highest realm. And the Rebbe says, Kol ha'omer, and this that we said, is menigel and is even about any individual. Even more so, when the individual in question, meaning the Rebbe, when the Rebbe is here for, is a neshama klalis, is a general soul, and his avodah is much greater than the regular person's avodah. So if his avodah only becomes complete when he gets married, how important is the marriage of a Rebbe? And that's why we're celebrating it at this February. When we're talking about not just a private individual, we're talking about a general individual, the leader of the Jewish people, the Nasi. This is, of course, a very general event, not just something private to the Rebbe. And this affects his entire generation in these worlds and the higher worlds. The Rebbe adds to that. Like I said before, if when it comes to the greater picture, we don't go generation by generation. The whole creation was a tzimtzum, was a contraction. Into all the 5,785 years that we're existing so far. So therefore, a wedding of an ish klali, of a general person, doesn't just affect his generation, but affects all the generations. Isa b'tikkun zara, the Rebbe says, it says in the Tikkun Zara, al pasuk dar hoylech v'dar ba. The pasuk says, generations come, generations go. The Zohar explains, shapir shb'zahu shedar zeh shahoylech hu adar ba. Meaning the literal translation is, generations come, generations go. The Zohar says no. The same generation that is leaving is the same generation that's coming back. It's a recycling. This generation comes back again. To fix what was lacking. We'll constantly be coming back to fix the mistakes, the things that we haven't completed. Nimtza. So we see the generations are not isolated. Every generation keeps on coming back in order to do to refix what they have to do. So if there's something that happens in this world, even in our time now, when the previous Rebbe got married, and the year that he got married, it's not just affecting his time; it's affecting all previous times. Because now that we understand the importance of marriage and the moment of the wedding, and especially when we're talking about a Nasi, a Rebbe, so that's why the previous Rabbabich's Rebbe a wedding was very joyful. Because now at that moment, something very essential was happening that affected all the generations. So when you have such an effect, obviously in the positive, brings great joy. And how are you supposed to bring something down? How do we get things to be going? It's through Torah. Every hamshacha, every flow has to come through Torah. And therefore, because there was a great moment of joy, it translated in the type of Torah that was said at the wedding. That the discourses of Chassidus that was said at the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe's wedding were tremendous with no limitations. There's a story that happened. Remember, you have to remember, who is the father of the previous Rebbe's, the Rebbe Rashab, who is the one who expanded, to read today's Hayom Yom about the Hemshech Taf Reish Ayin Beis, the 1912. The Rebbe Rashab was one who expanded on ideas of Chassidus that were never done to the level of the Rebbe Rashab. I mean, his ideas of Chassidus that were explained at depth, he was able to take a subject and explain it for years. So now he says, when the Rebbe Rashab said at the wedding of his son, he was the Rebbe, so he said the Maimer. And what was the Maimer he said? Samach to Samach. The wedding based on one of the blessings we do at the wedding. V'diber be'inyan the Simcha part together. And one of the ideas he spoke about in the Maimer, that true joy should break all boundaries. Hifsik be'emtza amir Maimer. V'omer sh'nis alam atzlayu inyan. The Rebbe Rashab was in the middle of saying a Maimer, and he stopped, and he said, like, he's missing some ideas. Something got lost. The Kamim Kaima, he stood up. He said, this is in public. He had the Maimer written down. He went to the writing. He looked into his notes. He continued saying the Maimer. Something that was extremely unordinary. I mean, you have to remember, the Rebbes did not speak with notes. Even if the Rebbe Rashab wrote down the Maimer before he said it, which he did obviously, that he would say it by heart. So to our Rebbe would speak Farbrengen after Farbrengen for years, 40 years, when the Rebbe Farbrengen, hour after hour, the Rebbe never walked in with one notepad. Sometimes the Rebbe would walk in with a Chumash, if you're saying on the Chumash and Rashi. The Rebbe wouldn't want to quote a pasuk outside the book. But the actual ideas that the Rebbe spoke, the Rebbe absolutely never walked in with notes. So here the Rebbe Rashab is in the middle of the Maimer, and something extraordinary happens. He gets up and looks in his notes. Move on, and the Rebbe says, obviously, anyone who's only a fool would think that he literally forgot what the Rebbe forgot what he had to say. Move on, you can't just translate this idea literally that the Rebbe forgot what he was supposed to say. He lost his train of thought. Something like this never happened. And again, the Rebbe Rashab spoke for years. Long, lengthy ideas that would take. He was able to carry an idea for 2-3 years, Shabbos after Shabbos. What does it mean that the Rebbe would forget something? Ella, what does this mean then? The Rebbe is saying, what does it mean? The Rebbe was able to say tremendous ideas about how to describe a Hasidic event. So the Rebbe had no problem. The Rebbe would say it as it is. And the Rebbe says, what does it mean that the thing kind of the word helim gets concealed. Like when something goes back, there's a vacuum. It leaves where it's showing to vacuum back to its source. So the Rebbe says, what does it mean that the thing was, so to say, eliminated, was taken, the idea was lost from him because it went all the way back to the source. The idea that comes from a source, every idea has to come from someplace. The idea went back to its source. Kloimer, in order for when the Rebbe would say what he's saying, he's talking about unlimited boundaries of breaking all boundaries with Simcha. So in order to really be effective with this idea, like you totally break all the boundaries, that power had to go back to its source to kind of rejuvenate and come back forceful again. It wasn't enough where it originally came from. The Rebbe Rashab had to go draw it from a deeper source to be able to say that Simcha breaks all boundaries. All the way to its original source. Like we find, when a person rests, when a person takes a nap, then all your strengths go back to its origin. You're able to get new, rejuvenated energy to go forward when you wake up, when you get up from your nap. So to in our idea, it's not just physical strength. Ideas also have to go back to their source. And the Rebbe Rashab let the idea go all the way back to its source to be able to withdraw it again from a much deeper source. What does it mean? The Rebbe Rashab had the idea. But it was the way he had it now. He wasn't happy. It wasn't deep enough. He wanted to take that, let the idea go back to its source. So when he brings it back down, it's going to be more powerful to this idea how simcha, joy, breaks old boundaries. And the Rebbe says, so now when you look at it from this perspective, it's a fascinating story, not like a story that the Rebbe, God forbid, forgot something. Nevertheless, it only happened at the time of the wedding. Why? Because the wedding is such a deep moment that there were great events, and the Rebbe Rashab wanted to be able to reach ideas that were from its source even deeper than they originally came down the first time. Only at the wedding of the previous Rebbe, of his son. And like we said before, at a wedding in general, especially the wedding of a Rebbe, it affects a new light for all generations. So therefore, the Torah that he said then kind of went back to its source, so he could bring back even a deeper light. And therefore, the joy and the way the Rebbe said Chassidus was without no limitations, even the limitations of how ideas come down to this world. And the Rebbe says, as based on the idea that's known, so we know that things, let's just see 17 and 18, what's going on over here? No, we're missing what the Rebbe said. But the Rebbe said basically when the happenings reoccur, it means that the anniversary comes, there's this new energy, that great light that happened at a time of an event, especially like a wedding. When you celebrate the anniversary of such an event, we're kind of reliving that new energy. Then the Rebbe spoke about this is the famous Sicha about making a Gmaika. Sorry, I didn't realize it's not in the actual text. And how the Rebbe explains, it's a beautiful talk, worth obviously for everyone to study, of the talk about making a Maika, making a protected space, protecting your space. And the Rebbe connected that to marriage, that kisivne bayis means when a person builds a home, that we have to know that kipla neufel, the person is maybe vulnerable to fall in this new journey in life, and you have to have boundaries to make sure that you don't fall and make this new stage in your life into be a positive stage. The Rebbe says, "Daver kfar pam." We spoke before in previous times. That the Rebbe's Maimer, meaning our Rebbe, got married in the year Tafresh Peites, which is 1929, to his wife, Rebbetzin Chaim Musya. The Rebbe got married to the previous Rebbe, who we were just talking about his wedding, to his second daughter, Chaim Musya. The wedding took place in Poland, and the Rebbe was a cousin of the Rebbetzin. And at that event, at that wedding, the previous Rebbe said the Maimer Lecha Dodi, which is based on the Lecha Dodi we see on Shabbos, which explains the idea of the Lecha Dodi Likarskala, the my beloved comes to the bride. It's tradition in Chabad weddings that the groom says the Maimer Lecha Dodi at their wedding. We know that the previous Rebbe said a Maimer, and he made sure to add ideas from every of the Rebbes, starting from the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad. And the Rebbe says that the previous Rebbe was quoting these Torahs of different Rebbes, different ideas that the Alter Rebbe said about marriage, and the Mittel Rebbe said, the second Rebbe said about marriage, the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek said about marriage, the Maharash, the Rashab. Why? By saying their Torah, that was their invitation, as the great grandparents and grandparents of the groom and the bride, to come join the wedding. He invited them through saying their Torah. That's why we know the custom based on what the Rebbe says in this little paragraph. The custom by the groom today, that when we say the Maimer Lecha Dodi, we're very careful not to deviate from the actual wording of the Maimer. Because when we say the Maimer, then the groom today says the Maimer in a Chabad wedding, then that's also inviting our Rebbes to the wedding, starting from the Alter Rebbe. So we were very careful to say the wording by the wedding. As a groom, we knew that we say the Maimer very exact. The Rebbe is based on this idea that the saying of the Maimer and the different teachings that are in the Maimer is a way of inviting the Rebbe to the wedding. The Rebbe says it's a good idea Shebechol chasna koidim achupa yachsar chasna. Now here we have it. The Rebbe says that the Rebbe suggests that at every wedding, the chassan, or mishu achor, if the chassan can't, then someone else on behalf of the chassan. Shebicholti lahazmin as a maimer Lecha Dodi, someone who can say the maimer should say the maimer at the wedding. Because when you say the maimer, you're inviting all the Rebbes to the wedding. B'Torah Zmona, as an invitation, the Nishmai Tzadikim, to the souls of the righteous. How do we send an invitation to the Alter Rebbe when our child gets married? So the groom says the maimer of that the previous Rebbe said in 1929, and by repeating that maimer, it's again inviting the Alter Rebbe to the wedding now that your family's having. And then the Rebbe said a maimer kein Sicha Lecha Dodi. There's a maimer that the Rebbe himself said in honor of the anniversary of the previous Rebbe, and he said of Lecha Dodi also. The Rebbe continues. Based on the idea of based on what we said before, Sivav, this that we said before about the mitzvah, like I said, the edited talk in detail could be learned on our own. But the Rebbe says that this idea that we learn about the mitzvah that says in this week's parsha, that when one builds a new home, you have to make a micah, you have to make a fence around the roof. And the reason is so no one should fall off your roof. The Rebbe says he would like to add, so the Rebbe is saying the idea of Micah, which we have to see what Sivav, he doesn't say what the Micah was. Sorry. I just going to go back to what the Rebbe says. We skipped it. Sivav says like this: Nisbar v'inyan kisivne bayis chadish v'naisa Micah l'gagecha. And the Sicha and the Rebbe spoke about the talk that when you build a new home, you should make a fence around the roof. B'kesh l'inyan surim, the Rebbe connected it to marriage. Ba'askira, he mentioned sheyeshtem kam b'churim. There are certain young men, they're going to get married this week. When it comes a new time in their life, like the Rebbe says, a marriage starts a new avoda, a new time of service. You have to make a fence. And what is that fence, the Rebbe says? The Rebbe says, Gedorim v'sayogim machshava dibur ma'aseh. You have to make fences and boundaries in your thought, speech, and action, what you think about and what you speak about and what you do. To make sure that there won't be any fall. Because if you don't have a fence around the roof, you could fall down. Like it says, the faller will fall down. So now the Rebbe reaches back to that subject. The idea of making a fence in your thought, speech, and action. When you get married, you have to sharpen your resolution in Torah mitzvahs. In all the three garments of thought, speech, and action. So the Rebbe says, whoever hasn't done that yet, so if you didn't do it before your marriage, do it at least in the 7 days of celebration known as the Sheva Brachas. And if you didn't do it then yet, so at least do it in the first 30 days after the wedding. And Toiv Yeser, better to do in the first 30 days than the first 60 days. The Rebbe says, don't wait. You say, oh, well, the Rebbe suggests that before we get married, we kind of make these mental boundaries or sometimes physical boundaries. In our own life, the Rebbe says, don't wait. If you didn't do it now. But the idea is, what does it mean to make a fence? Any inyan, we're not just talking about a groom, that the groom has to have kind of, while he's a groom, to make all these preparations, he'll create a fence around, to start, so to say, be on a higher level of service while he's a groom. And after he gets married, you go back to the way you were. Everything goes down. Take all the fences down. It has to be everlasting. From when you get married, these resolutions that you've made to strengthen in your resolve of thought, speech, and action within Torah mitzvahs, have to be for going forward after the marriage, of course, as well. And the more we get going to start setting up the system, the better. The Rebbe says, even if you've been married for many years. You say, okay, the Rebbe is talking to a young groom. And you're wearing your kapata. Kapata is the Shabbos garb. That whether it's black or blue. So it doesn't make a difference. You have to, if you haven't started to make boundaries in your life, within your marriage, even if you're married for many years, do it now. Kinir nasim is inyan shalim. Ma'iyah hagavan shel hasirtuk harishan ba'itulum legarmi kol shar b'chinas rucha yehud shavik begoy. All right, the Rebbe is going into the idea about the different colors of the kapata. The Rebbe says b'sefer Pardes Yeshna Shar Shalom, in the book of the Pardes of the Ramak, there's a whole section Shem Shar Hagivonim about colors. The Rebbe is kind of jabbing a bit, if I may say that. The people who kind of get fancy with their Shabbos garb, instead of having the classic black one, they want to have a more fancy one, a blue one, a colored one. So Rebbe says, yes, colors is very nice because, the Ramak has a whole section in his book of the Pardes about colors. But the Rebbe says, I'm not sure if he meant the colors of the kapata on Shabbos. The Rebbe says, I'm not sure that when the groom wants to get a fancy, different, so to say, Shabbos garb, by having it a blue as instead of a black, he's thinking about the different colors of the Kabbalistic ideas that brought down in the Ramak. The Rebbe says in America, basically, everything becomes a big deal. Every time someone does something, there's a big deal, right? Everyone's excited. This person now is, really stylish and gets himself a blue surtuk. And the Rebbe says even more. Even if you didn't make a boundary in your life, and you're marrying off children, you can still make a boundaries in your life. It's never too late to start creating boundaries in your marriage life in general. The Rebbe says, Pama amarti bisvadis. Once I was talking at Fabrengen. I think quoted from the Rebbe Marash. The Rebbe said that I spoke about the idea that a person, when they learn during the week, if you want to know how should you divide your time, let's say you have 3 hours to learn a day. So you say, the Rebbe says you should do 2/3 the revealed parts of Torah, meaning Talmud, law, etc., and 1/3 Chassidus. And when it comes to Shabbos, you do reverse. Shabbos learn 2/3 Chassidus and 1/3 to be more the revealed parts of Torah. The Rebbe says he spoke about this. It says he spoke about it in Shvat Tavshin Yud Gimel 1953. The Rebbe says, when I said it, I meant, I thought, the Rebbe thought he's quoting what the Rebbe Rashab said in Kuntres Eitz Chaim, which is a publication from the Rebbe Rashab. It says, I looked inside. That he says that the Rebbe says, I'm just saying what the Rebbe says. The Rebbe says that when he looked into the Sefer, he saw that he, so to say, made a mistake. And instead of doing 2/3 Chassidus and 1/3 Nigla, the entire Shabbos one should only study Chassidus. The Rebbe said he knew that if he said 2/3 Chassidus, 1/3 Nigla, he wasn't making a mistake. It came from someplace. So the Rebbe says he was trying to search in his mind what was the source that he said what was the source that he said that you should learn, not like it says in Eitz Chaim that everything Chassidus, but 2/3 Chassidus and 1/3 Nigla. So he found, the Rebbe says now he realized that he found it in the will of the Rebbe Maharash to his sons. The Rebbe Maharash was the father of the Rebbe Rashab, Reb Shmuel Schneerson, the 4th Rebbe Chabad, that in his will he said that on Shabbos one should learn 2/3 Chassidus, 1/3 Nigla. Right? Other people have wills about how you should spend their money. The Rebbe Maharash's will is about how you should learn Chassidus on Shabbos. V'hinei Klal Nakit V'yadi. The Rebbe says, I have a rule. And it's a logical rule. When something gets revealed to you, It's not by chance a piece of information about something that happened that's disconnected from you. It's just passing information. If you hear information, it means you're connected to that information. Therefore, the students who learned in the yeshivas, if you went to the yeshiva of the Rebbe Rashab and you learned the Rebbe Rashab's publication, Eitz Chaim, the Tree of Life, and you learn the whole Shabbos only Chassidus, God should bless you. But the Rebbe is not going back on what he said because he has a source from the Rebbe Marash. In general, if you're not, so to say, from that group, then the idea is you should do 2/3 Chassidus and 1/3 Nigla. And the Rebbe said, based on that, again, the Rebbe is celebrating his father-in-law's anniversary. You have to remember, in 1954, the previous Rebbe obviously passed away in 1950, but his Rebbetzin, Nechama was still alive. So the Rebbe is celebrating, she was alive, she lived for many years after that, till 1970 or so. And so he's celebrating his father and mother-in-law's anniversary. And how's he doing it? He said a Maimer Lecha Dodi. And now the Rebbe is going to say an idea on a wedding, like a drasha, an idea nigla. And what did he say? The Rebbe says, this by in Kiddushin Kasavi. The Rebbe went in to explain the idea of how one gets engaged. One of the three ways is through money. Like Sheneg Kal Yisrael the Kaddish B'Kesef, through silver, right? We use a ring. Sheyesh levara bebeis efanim im ha'ila hu ha'kinyan v'aydei miskadeshes oila hepech ha'ila hu ha'kiddushin v'aydei hu koine ha'davar. Okay, the Rebbe goes into a whole idea that is spoke about in length and published in the Lekutei Sicha. It's Chelik Yutas. Let's continue. We have a few more minutes. Reminder divrei maskil Lecha Dodi, in the mimer that was said at the wedding, Lecha Dodi. Maybe Kvakidush Mechamer Benegel Inin HaShabbos Shukuli Yom Misparchim HaShabbos. The Rebbe says in the mimer, he quotes an idea that we've learned many times, that all the days of the week get blessed by Shabbos. There's ways of how it works, how Shabbos blesses the week. The Shabbos, that it actually blesses the days, the previous days, the whole week before it. The Shabbos, that it's talking about the next week, that Shabbos is blessing the coming week. And the third opinion is that it's talking about the 3 days in between. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. The Shabbos, as we learned many times. Now the Rebbe is saying it kind of as a conversation, but the Rebbe is saying, explaining it. The Rebbe quoted many times. That's all three of these things. It takes the energy of Shabbos, of the previous week. Whoever prepares on Shabbos eats on Shabbos. And then it's completion, it gives energy for the next week. And it also has the time of from Wednesday through Tuesday. So therefore, however you look at it, the Shabbos always is connected to the next week's parsha. Because you learn the previous week, starting on Sunday, we start to learn Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, every day we study different parts of the portion of the week, right? So that's the Shabbos is connected to the portion that we've been studying throughout the week, which is Parshas Teitzei. But because Shabbos is connected to the next week, so Shabbos is also connected to Parshas Kisavar. I'm going to actually just finish this. So the Rebbe says like this: Haschos Parsha. What's this week's Parsha start with? He says to them that when you go out to war and God's going to give you that you should be victorious in war, you may have captives. What does this mean in Ruchnis, as we learned in Lekutei Torah? What is your enemy? Is your body sometimes and your animal soul. As explained in Lekutei Torah, the Rebbe says, these are the true enemies of a person, trying to bring a person to sin, desire. You have to sometimes go out to war. Hey, Nemes, the Rebbe says it's true. Shakavan any lishvar, like the Baal Shem Tov says, we're not supposed to break our body and our animal soul. El lavarim, what does it mean to fight them? To refine them. But the process of refining your body and your animal soul is a process of war. Your body and your animal soul don't want to be refined. They want to enjoy the enjoyments of life, and you're trying to make them spiritual, godly based, Torah based. More than that, Rebbe says, it's not just a battle; it's a hard battle. The animal soul says, "I came first. I'm in the body first. You give it to me. I'm already here, and you're trying to dictate the narrative of what we're supposed to be doing. I want to do things the way I want to do it, and it's a hard war. You have to go out to war. All you have to do is go out to war, and then you're guaranteed. God's going to make you victorious in this difficult battle of transforming your body and your animal soul. You will conquer it. Not the opposite, that it will conquer you. The same reason, the Rebbe says more than that. That not only are you going to conquer it, but you're going to have additions. You're going to take captives. What does it mean, the captives? Not, God forbid, captives like they're doing in Gaza. The captives means the sparks of holiness that are involved, that were involved in the worldly things that your body and animal soul were doing up until that point. Like it says, if Rav Tvua is Bekach Shar, where do you have a lot of Tvua, a lot of weight, a lot of wheat from the power of the ox of the animal? The Yom Shabbos, and the parsha this Shabbos is also connected to next week's parsha, which is Kisavai. In your parsha Shavua Haba, parsha Kisavai Medubar Al Derech Enyanim HaBikurim. We talk about the first fruit. That you weren't obligated to give the first fruits until they conquered the land and divided it. That is only that because you've conquered and accomplished already of settling the land, now you can start bringing the first fruit. And a continuation to this idea, I guess, was lost. And this finishes our class here tonight. And Laila Tov, everyone, thank you for joining.